If you've ever played Fortnite, this is one video you've got to watch. This is the entire Fortnite storyline. 5 years of it, all in one video. For it to all make sense, you've got to watch to the end, so let's go. It all started millions of years ago. A big bang occurred, creating a big mass of energy we know called the 0 point. It connects trillions of realities together. It created itself a home called Reality Zero to protect itself from the many threats wanting to harness its power. As you'll see, there's a lot of these threats, and this is where our story starts. A mysterious group called the Imagined Order found out about Reality Zero and decided to move to the island millions of years ago and set up base underground, in between both islands known as the Bridge, with access to the surface via bunkers. This company is run by Geno, along with a mysterious inner circle. He pretty much uses the 0 point's energy to create the loop, which forces people that he's kidnapped to fight against each other for 22 minutes with an ever-closing storm, and once time is up, their memories are reset and then the game starts again. The Imagined Order pretty much abuse the power of the 0 point to manipulate realities, travel to and from them, try to change their fate, and to use it for immortality. This is all to create the ideal society, and they've been keeping the island in this order the whole time. Above ground, everything was pretty peaceful. Initially, the island was pretty basic and undeveloped, with a few small hamlets and farmlands. As the first few seasons progressed, the island saw great scale and development with the introduction of places like tilted towers. But what happens next, no one could have expected. A bright light appeared in the sky, and as day by day went past, this object in the sky got closer and closer, to the point where telescopes appeared all around the island to give us a better look. Damn, it was a meteor heading straight towards the island. Meteorites started falling from the sky, and Tilted Towers was in the firing line for this huge meteor when it finally made impact. In a shocking turn of events, the giant meteor struck the center of the island, destroying Dusty Divot and the factories, with small meteors ending up destroying Risky Reels, the prison, and part of Tilted. This part of the map was then barricaded off, and construction began on the meteor to see what was inside. Weirdly, during this time, a movie about superheroes was being filmed. They had quite a few different sets around the island, but most importantly was a complete rocket built at the villain's base. But with all of this going on, a mysterious person was spying on the operations going on at the meteor site. But who could it be? Well, actually, we come to find out later on. One day, the meteor cracked open and someone had been broken free from the pod. It turns out this was the Visitor, and this is where the mess of the Fortnite storyline begins, all because of this guy. But who is he and what was he doing here? Well, he's part of a team known as the Seven. They're a group of space knights that were originally kidnapped by Geno to add to the game, but they were too intelligent and actually managed to escape his loop. They'd banded together to become the greatest guardians of the 0 point, with their sole purpose to protect it and to free it again. They didn't like the way that the Imagined Order were running things and its horrifying program. They had special suits that were built to stop them from being inside the loop and to suffer the effects of it. That's why the Visitor had arrived on the meteor, to test the capabilities of their new suits. He ended up running across the island and finding this prop rocket in the villain's base. Pop rocks that were found in the crater were also stolen and taken to be used as fuel in this rocket. Now, after warnings all around the island, it was now day of the launch of the rocket. It took off and it was amazing. The trip had been successful and the suits had worked inside the loop. He drifted back home, but this caused a huge tear in the sky which we're still feeling the effects of today. Things from here were about to get a whole lot worse. Items from other dimensions had been falling out of the sky until the worst thing imaginable happened. Just before the rift in the sky closed up, a giant cube spawned onto the island who we first thought was pretty friendly. But as we find out, that was far from the truth. Hearing the cube travelled around the island, rolling around, but a dark world could be seen on the other side. He caused corruption everywhere he moved, leaving rune marks everywhere, and at the end of Season 5, he eventually arrived at Loot Lake before dissolving into it. Oh, this isn't good. Darkness started to rise, with the cube still being intact underneath the centre of the island, and it was now levitating into the sky. Kevin the Cube then took this island to each rune that he had created around the map and powered them up before ending back up at the centre of Loot Lake. He had sent the the island into darkness. The cube began to spin rapidly, destroying itself, hoping in the process that it would destroy the island as well. But thankfully, a rift butterfly takes us into the void, which we now know as the in-between, to protect us from the cube's meltdown. We then found out that the cube was on the island to harvest something underneath the island. This was the Cube Queen's first attempt at stealing energy from the 0 point. You'll see as the video goes on that the 0 point's energy attracts loads of people from all different realities to come try and steal it. The cube's mission sent by the Cube Queen had failed, and peace on the Fortnite island had been restored. Yeah, that didn't last long. Everything seemed to be back to normal until one day, a parachute appeared over at Flush Factory. It was only because of the weekly Fortnite screenshots we realised a mysterious robot could be spotted in the back of a lot of the images. He was known as AIM, and he was scouting the island, meaning something bad was about to happen. Off in the distance, a white fog could be seen out at sea. Day by day, it got closer and closer until we found out, yeah, it was a huge iceberg. A shard off of the ice moon had broken free after the explosion of the cube, and now the Ice King and his Arctic team had arrived. Polar Peak now towered over the island and was the home of the Ice King and his dragon eggs. A few weeks had gone past and we'd noticed that Polar Peak had started to melt and revealed a prisoner trapped inside the ice. The Ice King had originally been drawn to the island by the energy of the cube. Luckily for him, he ended up finding a shard of the cube that was left after the explosion and was now powerful enough to take over the island by himself. The Ice King, hovering above Polar Peak, unleashed the power of the cube, covering the island in a blanket of snow. The island was now his. But yeah, little did he know his arch nemesis, the Fire King, had escaped. He was originally frozen in the ice by the Fire King after he betrayed him. But now he'd been set free, he'd stolen some of the dragon's eggs and used fire magic to bring himself back to his original powerful state. The short reign of the Ice King was concluded, but war was about to happen. The Fire King had created a huge volcano, and whatever the Ice King was after on the island, he was now after too. Only this time, they had some other company. Pirates. The dragon eggs had been stolen and had hatched into creatures known as the hybrids, with the intention to take down the Ice King. During the fight over the island and its treasures, the government organisation had been digging at sites to relieve the island's surface from the pressures of this new volcano. After all of this digging, they stumbled across some metal over near Loot Lake. But what was under there? Oh yeah, and the Ice King quickly defeats the prisoner in the battle and freezes him under the icy waters on the island, and the Ice King just ends up returning back to the ice moon. But what was this metal structure that the government had found? They knew something important was under there because clearly that's what the cube was after. They kept on digging and eventually uncovered a huge underground vault. As loopers, we finally unlocked this vault, and inside we had access to vaulted weapons. And this is where we found out that the Fortnite map and loot was being controlled from an outside source. As quickly as we'd been given access, we were kicked straight out again. But we learnt something huge. The power everyone was after, the 0 point, was locked away in there and protected by someone. But we'd gone a step too far. We weren't allowed inside the vault, and the energy produced from the 0 point sent a ripple across the island, upsetting the prisoner's once dormant volcano into erupting. This threw volcanic material up into the sky, destroying parts of the island like Retail Row and our beloved Tilted Towers. Oh, except that one no sweat insurance building that pretty much survives everything. One piece of rock thrown out by the volcano had hit Polar Peak and left a huge crack on the iceberg. This whole time, Singularity had been guarding this power source of the 0 point, but with everybody now knowing about it, the energy was harnessed to create futuristic towns. She'd revealed her secrets to the world and allowed the 0 point's energy to be now used by the government organisation. Even a monument in Neo Tilted was put up in honour of her saving the island and being a hero. But Singularity didn't let loose all of her secrets. She made out that everyone would now be safe with this infinite energy source, when really all this new infrastructure was built to help protect the vault against its next big attack. Polar Peak had continued to melt in the background and revealed something crazy. A massive eye, belonging to a monster of even bigger proportions. As days went by, the surrounding ice continued to melt, and he escaped his icy prison and dives into the ocean. The monster zoomed around the ocean's edge to then eventually jump onto the island and destroying the power cables to Neo Tilted. But who was there to save the island once again? Singularity. She intended on killing it, but little did the loopers know, this whole time she'd been working on building a mecha robot inside Pressure Plant, something that could take down the Polar Peak monster. The robot was complete. It was equipped with missiles and would be piloted by the Paradigm, one of the members of the Seven and someone we've yet to meet properly. She'd actually been imprisoned years ago by the Imagined Order and offered to pilot this mech for them. The monster decided to take attack on the island again, but this time it would go for the power of the 0 point inside of the vault. The fight between the robot and monster was awesome, but it could only end one way for the survival of the island. But just as all hopes seemed to have been lost, in a last-ditch attempt, Paradigm destroyed the opening of the vault, grabbed the 0 point and landed a devastating impact on the monster, giving her enough time to grab the last trick up her sleeve, which no one saw coming: the Monument of Singularity. It was a sword? This defeated the monster once and for all, and Paradigm flew off in the robot and escaped the Imagined Order. But left behind was a damaged vault with an exposed 0 point. The Seven are not going to be happy with this. Our attention now turns to the 0 point. The longer it was left exposed, the more and more unstable it became. The loop of the island had been broken and all timelines had been merged into one. The distress calls of the 0 point alerted the Seven, and they returned to sort this mess out. It was too far gone. The only way to correct things now was to send the whole reality into a black hole and a new beginning. The plan had worked. The Seven managed to rift out of the reality in rockets just before the implosion took place. But Reality Zero, the 0 point's home, was destroyed. We were then stuck looking at a screen with a black hole for a few days until the 0 point finally stabilized and we got spat out into a new timeline. The bridge was still kept intact and the Seven had succeeded. With the loop now up and running again, the Imagined Order sent out 4 explorers, a team called Ego, into this new world to explore the area. But unknowingly, working behind the scenes is another group called Alter, and the operations are run by Chaos Agent. Just like Jones, anyone that escaped the loop after being in it, a snapshot is then created. And this team of agents actually came face to face with their snapshots inside the loop, but they weren't exact clones of them. They were different. That was the work of Chaos Agent. He had altered them. 8-Ball went out on a mission to destroy his own snapshot called Scratch. And when they finally met, Scratch ended up killing 8-Ball. Pretty much killing himself. And because of this, he started corrupting. This was huge because it was the first time a snapshot had killed the real person that he was a snapshot of. And so this caused Scratch to corrupt. A snapshot can't live in its complete form if the person they are cloned off of dies inside the loop. Therefore, he became a glitch. With all of this going on, something was arising in the background. At the beginning of Season 2, we saw Alter's true leader finally emerge. We originally thought it was Chaos Agent, but it turns out it's Midas. He had turned the group Alter into a new faction called Shadow. Shadow was now a crime syndicate organisation and works undercover, blackmailing people and amassing a huge wealth. Midas, at the top of this empire, had deflected from the Imagined Order after working for them and is now putting everything he'd learned into action. Just like the legend of Midas, he was punished for being too greedy because one day he went after King Oro's gold and instead got the curse of the gold touch. As time passes, Chaos Agent actually ends up betraying Midas and takes control as Shadow himself. So Midas, using his wealth, starts up a new organisation called Ghost. Now at war against each other, Midas can get to work. This whole time, he was preparing a huge attack using all of the knowledge that he'd learned about the loop growing up in the Imagined Order's academy. A few weeks passed and a lot of Midas's ghost agents started to deflect as they eventually found out about Midas's big plan. That's right, the Doomsday device. Midas was no part of any organisation now, it was all for himself. Weeks of preparation went past and the Doomsday device was finally complete. The agency explodes as it powers up, Midas's plan in controlling the storm and stopping the loop was working. But then the loopers, us, started hallucinating, and we ended up in the Imagine Order's base in the bridge due to this device. Oh my god, it's John Jones. He's seen everything that's going on and can't believe what's happening. If you didn't know, Jones is a field agent that's pretty much dedicated his life to work for the Imagine Order, and in return, he's left behind tons of snapshots of himself after jumping in and out of the loop. I mean, look, he even has a wardrobe full of all the costumes that he wears every time he jumps in the loop. That's why there's so many variations of snapshots of him. He dresses up so you can identify the real Jonesy, rather than there being hundreds of exact clones of him. We were now outside of the loop, and this sends the Imagine Order into high alert and a state of panic. Their control was being compromised by Midas from inside the loop. After travelling backwards and forwards a few times, the storm is now fighting back against Midas's device, and it resorts to creating a storm using water. Midas's plan has now failed, and the island now floods. Adrift out at sea, Midas just got eaten by a shark. Well, that's him done for. Or is it? We return to the Fortnite Island with it being completely flooded, which then over the course of the season begins to drain. And Jules, the daughter of Midas, the real mastermind behind building this doomsday device, took over the agency and turned it into the Authority. As the water levels went down, life went back to normal. Or did it? All of a sudden, something is spotted up in the sky. Something is drawn to the power of the 0 point on the Fortnite Island, an incoming threat of Galactus. This was warned to us by Thor. He'd entered the Fortnite Island into the loop and had already begun to lose his memory. His plan was simple: create a Bifrost to bring other Marvel characters to the island to help protect against the incoming threat of Galactus. Of course, Galactus was drawn to the island by the 0 point's energy. Tony Stark was the man of this season. He brought to the island brand new technologies and even managed to rift in his workshop, Stark Industries. From there, we would create a mini army to help stop Galactus, but that could only be done with our help. We ended up modifying battle buses, filling them with gamma bombs, and then after weeks of seeing Galactus approach the island, it was now time. Galactus ripped the 0 point out of the bridge using the energy beams emitted from his hands to extract the 0 point's power. The 0 point sensed its power being drained and cracked itself, sucking Galactus and all of the loopers into the in-between. Exactly what it did to protect us all that time ago from the cube exploding. We then tricked Galactus into consuming all of the battle buses, which then proceeded to detonate all the gamma cells inside of him, and Galactus was now defeated. We went back to Reality Zero, but something had been going on in the Imagined Order's office. They were in full panic mode. The 0 point had once again been left exposed on the island and damaged, this time torn out of the bridge from the Imagined Order's headquarters by Galactus. It was in such an unstable state, similar to what the Devourer left it in. Dr. Sloan straight away got onto the phone to Jones, telling him to jump into the loop again and to sort out this situation, making sure that no one else would escape the loop, and whilst there, to try and fix this mess without attracting the attention of the Seven. John Jones located the best bounty hunters and warriors from all realities. He paid them to guard the 0 point to make sure that no one else entered or exited the loop. They did their work, and John Jones went on to his next plan to stabilize reality. Unfortunately for Jones, pure portals opened up from the 0 point, letting in enemies from all other realities. He was hopping in and out of the loop so much, recruiting teammates to fight against these enemies, that the 0 point became so unstable. His aim now was pretty simple: create enough chaos on the Fortnite Island within the loop to give the Imagined Order enough time to fix the 0 point without being noticed. But Jones quickly realises that this isn't working and that the Imagined Order aren't doing anything about it. It's just getting worse and worse. So he takes matters into his own hands. He deflects against the Imagined Order, ignoring Dr. Sloan's orders. His plan now was to bring the Seven to the island because they're the only ones that can fix this mess. So he threw his portal gun into the 0 point, which made it now so unstable. It then alerted the 7, and the Foundation ended up turning up in a meteor and immediately starts attacking Jones, who eventually offers up a compromise. To help stabilize the 0 point, in exchange, Jones will take the Foundation to Geno, the leader of the Imagined Order. They agree to work together to save the 0 point from exploding, and the Foundation would end up sealing himself along with the 0 point inside a chrome spire to give it time to heal and repair itself. But because of this, he ended up trapping both himself and Jones inside the loop as a sacrifice. I mean, it needed to be done. The spire now stood tall, protecting the 0 point and cutting it off from any dangers. But one person had turned up on the island that was very interested in it. Raz arrived to the island and tried to learn everything he could about the spire and its secrets, like he was obsessed. He explored the whole island and ended up stumbling across the Imagined Order scrolls, which then led him to the location of a spirit vessel, which was a shard of Kevin the Cube. This then quickly corrupted Raz and turned him into the Glyph Master, and he was now a beacon to direct the last reality straight to the island. He had summoned them, and the Cube Queen arrived in her huge mothership. So, the island's biggest threat yet comes along. They arrived and destroyed the spire in an attempt to steal the 0 point, but it failed. It wasn't there anymore, and the Foundation went flying. The invasion had now started, but where had the 0 point gone? Well, apparently sometime between the spire going up and the last reality arriving, the Imagined Order had returned and now become public. There was no more hiding underground and controlling the loop. They'd taken back control of the 0 point, and it was now back in their hands inside the bridge. Dr. Sloan, a high-ranking Imagined Order member, and her Imagined Order army are now at battle with the Chimera. And to hopefully combat them, the Imagined Order set up satellite stations across the island as the last reality sends saucers to abduct parts of our island. Dr. Sloan came up with the brilliant idea of planting bombs underneath the abducted parts of the islands with the intent to then destroy the mothership from within. It sounded like the perfect plan, right? It was now the big day. Dr. Sloan had prepared a group of loopers to infiltrate the mothership, but little did she know she was about to fall into the trap of the Cube Queen. There was an army of cubes that powered the mothership. This was exactly what the Cube Queen wanted. At her first attempt of taking over the island with Kevin the Cube failed. The explosion of the mothership is exactly what the Cube Queen wanted, to litter the island full of cubes. So the Cube Queen's plan had worked, and Dr. Sloan looked like an idiot. The race is now on to save the island, but it looks like it's too late. There was a gold cube that began rolling around the island, activating each corrupted cube, and they all started making their way rolling around to the center of the island. What was going on here? All the cubes conjoined to form a castle-like structure called the Convergence, which grew larger day by day, eventually creating a pyramid with the gold cube and the Cube Queen at the very top. What was about to happen, no one was prepared for. Her onslaught was about to begin. She gathers her power to open up a rift in the sky to the last reality, with the Cube Queen's cradle now in view. It's surely over now, right? Meanwhile, down in the bridge, Sloan and Gunnar are interrogating Jones after he deflected and got the 7 involved. That was until someone turns up to spoil the party. It was the Foundation, which also turned out to be the Rock. He was still alive even after the spire explosion. Dr. Sloan couldn't believe it. It was now time to save everyone, to save the gyro system and to flip the island. It was the last resort to stopping the Cube Queen and the last reality. Back above ground, both the Visitor and Scientist were rescuing loopers, taking them back inside the bridge to the center of the island where it was safe. Well, apparently it was. The room then quickly flooded and swept us out at sea, where we saw the island flipping and the Cube Queen and the last reality rifting away. They had been defeated, but it wouldn't be long before they're back again. After days out at sea, we then washed up on the beach. We were now on the flip side, the home of the 7. A brand new island, but full of familiar faces. The Foundation explains that as long as the Imagined Order keep exploiting the 0 point, they will never be safe from threats such as the last reality. And all realities are still in danger as long as they're in control. As we discover more and more about this island, some of Fortnite's biggest mysteries get solved. It turns out each rock in the sanctuary represents each member of the 7. You got the Foundation, the Scientist, the Visitor, Paradigm, the Origin, and the Sisters, who are both currently missing, who the Foundation is currently trying to find. Apparently, they've got connections to Geno, the leader of the Imagined Order. A few weeks go by and the Scientist leaves tape recordings scattered around the island, with one of the tapes suggesting that if the Imagined Order manage to counterattack the island before the 7 have regrouped, it's all going to be over and the 7 will be done for. It's now the Scientist's task to get the band back together. He gets in contact with Paradigm, the 7's official pilot, to overlook her complicated past for the war that's on the horizon. But as you can imagine, the Foundation isn't happy with Paradigm as she helped out Singularity build and control the mech robot. And obviously she ended up exposing the 0 point after defeating the monster. Exposing the 0 point was her last resort to win the fight, and she then escaped to the Ice Moon, another one of the 7's bases, and she hasn't been seen since. After multiple attempts, the Scientist finally managed to get a ping back from Paradigm. It turns out she's still alive. They're going to need her help. The sooner the better, as the Imagined Order, they're up to something. But it might be too late, because they've now surfaced onto the island. The Imagined Order are now moving fast. They've now got a base set up at Covert Cavern on the opposite side of the island. The Scientist's plan was now to get Paradigm back, and he sent out one of the rockets out of hatch number 1 to try and find her. But strangely enough, this mission failed, and it was down to the Imagined Order sabotaging the launch. They know the 7 are weak without all of their members. Rocket number 2 launched, and again it failed. But launch number 3 was a success, and we now have contact with Paradigm. We need her back home before the Imagined Order progress too much. But it might be a little too late. And then it happened. The invasion of the Imagined Order. The war has now officially commenced. The Imagined Order now have a grip on the island, with blimps and guards patrolling major points of interest. The 7 are weak without all their members, but it's time for war. We then also find out about the Origin's past, and it turns out that he was once known as the Cube King. But that's all behind them now. The war is in full swing. The Foundation travels around the island picking up recruits to be part of his resistance. I mean, they need all the help they can get. The first place to be overrun and taken down was the Daily Bugle. That's 1 of 6 blimps down. Week after week, we overtook the Imagined Order's outposts. Whilst war was raging on above, Agent Jones managed to sneak into the Imagined Order's headquarters to find out that the Imagined Order's Doomsday Division were working on their next device. Whilst there, he decides to be sneaky and looks for his old folder, as he's interested to see what they've got written up on him. Remember, he used to work for the Imagined Order, and he also wants to help the Imagined find out about her past too. And after hacking into the main server, he manages to find the profiles on all of the 7. All of them except the files of the sisters. Geno had deleted them. It turns out they were his daughters that he'd genetically made. Paradigm from space was picking up huge energy readings near Loot Lake. The Resistance now think the war is over. All that's left is Command Cavern, so they start celebrating and throw a party. Is this all a little too soon? The last sister, the Order, has now arrived to complete the 7, and she's helping us spy on the Imagined Order to see what their big plan is, and it's not looking good. It's too late. The Collider is now here. We need to find out what this huge machine is. So the Origin sneaks into the base of the Imagined Order to their simulation room. He runs a test, and it's not good. It looks like the Imagined Order have completed their plan. The whole of Reality Zero will be destroyed. The 7 weren't expecting this at all. The Imagined Order's plan of distracting us with the blimps and the war, it had all worked. It had given them enough time to build this device to end worlds using the power of the 0 point. The mech, it was back in action. This was Paradigm's huge plan. The Collider is now sending out pulses as it's powering up. It's time to jump into battle. We help launch the mecha robot from the 7's Ice Moon base and land it on the island, and we start taking down all the blimps and finally reach the Collider. But the ground around us collapses. The mech is now out of action. How are we going to destroy the Collider now? Dr. Sloan is the only one stopping us, and oh, there she goes. She'll never be seen again. Or will she? Meanwhile, Geno is currently fighting the Imagined on the upper levels of the Collider, and she sacrifices herself as they both fall into the 0 point. The 0 point is now focusing and showing Geno's location after he fell into the 0 point, and Jones and the Foundation jump in to hunt him down. They end up stumbling across Geno and the Imagined, slowly discorporating, getting scattered across the Omniverse, so Jones and the Foundation then leave. Geno and the Imagined had just both died. Well, maybe not Geno. His parts all end up in one singular reality and start to reform him. He'll be back. The 0 point has now been set free after thousands of years of being under control by the Imagined Order. It's now time to celebrate and have a party. But lurking in the distance, Fortnite's next villain is now overlooking the island. Another member of the last reality. They're back. Can we not just relax and just chill for a minute, please? All of a sudden, that beautiful tree that's given us a whole new biome to the island doesn't seem so good after all. The peacefulness of the island right now, it all seems too good to be true. The scientists suspect something's up as it's maybe a little bit too peaceful on the island right now. Over the coming weeks, strange offshoots of the reality tree start appearing all over the island, merging in different realities to this island and bringing us all points of interest within each loop. Maybe freeing the 0 point was a complete mistake. The 0 point should be situated in the middle of reality 0, in between both islands, but right now, although it's been freed, it's situated on the surface and it's exposed. Whilst the party is still going on, the 7 then proceed to run tests on this reality tree, gathering energy scans. There's a lot of 0 point energy pulsating through the roots, and the thing is, we don't know if this is normal or not, because the Imagined Order have always had control of the 0 point. We then end up teaming with Bush Ranger, using him as kind of like an experiment to see whether or not he gets affected whilst being around the reality tree. And the readings come back so far, and they include darkness, and more darkness. Yeah, the 0 point is definitely in trouble. Over the next few weeks, the 0 point will actually place relics all over the island for us to interact with. It's trying to let us know about something. There's an incoming danger. The Foundation, the Visitor, and the Order have now disappeared from the island, but they've left clues on their disappearance around the map. Most importantly, their helmets. Apparently, the Order hasn't been seen for weeks, and the Foundation hasn't logged the mission that he's gone on, but only his helmet can be found left behind, and he wouldn't leave that here by choice. The remaining members of the 7 attempt to investigate what's going on. A strange chrome substance is now spreading across the island, and it's consumed the Origin, the Visitor, and now the Scientist. Paradigm was now the only one left. She managed to escape just in time and jumped into the 0 point into reality 659. The Herald, a messenger of the last reality, the one we saw overlooking the reality tree, is now here. She's responsible for the chrome arriving, and it's now spreading out of control. The Paradigm manages to get in contact with Jones to try and find a way to stop the arrival of the Nothing, but unfortunately, with nearly all of the 7 gone, there's nothing much left we can really do. The reality tree was our final defense against the power of the Herald. Despite the efforts of the Loopers to hold the Herald back and destroy her, she fuses with the chrome and the reality tree, resulting in her sacrificing herself to completely destroy reality 0, to leave nothing else behind other than the 0 point. It was now easy for the last reality to come along and just take it, but Paradigm has got a plan. It's now time to construct and forge a temporary island to protect the 0 point, dragging in pieces of land from all other realities. realities. This is called Zero Fusion, and it comes with a ton of consequences. But it was our only option. So here is our new island. With all members of the Seven still missing except Paradigm, the island has a new leader over at the Citadel. One of the pieces of land that was pulled in to fuse the new island was the home of a snapshot of a young Geno known as the Oathbound. This was his kingdom, and he asked the Rift Warden Stellan to create a stable rift gate. But Stellan also had his own reasons to create it. He was being watched by a shapeless man. He said if he didn't finish the rift gate, the consequences would be terrible. Also keeping a keen eye on this project was Amy, the scientist's assistant. She wanted to use the rift gate to communicate with the scientist and the Seven to see how they are after being captured by the Chrome. She needed to find them before it was too late. She'd built herself a bodysuit and entered the gate to go save him. But there was a problem with the rift gate. Stellan couldn't maintain the power needed to open the rift gate and turned to using raw kinetic ore, which undisturbed pulses with unimaginable power. Stellan was actually able to capture enough of this energy to power the stars itself. The Ageless had set the coordinates. The rift gate was now online. But there was one problem. The rift gate was out of control. The Rift Warden Stellan tells the Ageless that it could tear a permanent hole in reality. But someone had manipulated the coordinates of the rift gate. It started to destabilize. The gate is now destroyed and the sky is torn. But who sabotaged this rift gate? Well, it turns out it was Evie. She had brought her home reality to the island, which ended up smashing through the rift in the sky, and that took us into Season 2. Megacity arrived, but it turns out it was in danger. There was a saboteur trying to start a war between all the syndicates, the residents of Megacity. The saboteur would be messing around with one of the syndicates and pinning the blame on the other. The whole point of this was an attempt to create complete chaos, and so the saboteur could take over Megacity. Not much time had gone past when the Peace Syndicate's data network had been hacked. All intel on the last reality was pretty much gone and corrupted, and it was all down to the saboteur again. Evie's plan to deal with this situation was to get all the syndicates to unite as one to form an alliance. So who was this saboteur? Well, apparently, according to Mystica, the saboteur was working for the Unseen. This group of people lived for causing chaos and were working closely with Triox Nox. Thankfully though, Renzo and Highwire put a stop to their plan. But while all the island was distracted with all of this going on, rumbles started to occur near Hidden Henge and Anvil Square. They intensified and eventually caused the island to split, revealing a long abandoned jungle which had been hidden underneath the surface of the island this whole time. Apparently, according to Mystica, the island started to split and crack due to the impact of Megacity hitting the island. Season 3 was finally here. An abandoned jungle full of ancient secrets. A team, well known as the Explorers, set up camp in this rainforest to study its past. And who was watching them this whole time? Dr. Sloan. She wasn't dead. After the big war in Chapter 3, she found herself trapped in this jungle in her tank and was rescued by someone. She no longer worked for the Imagined Order, as she is done with them, as she tells Gunnar. With all this secret dialogue that was being revealed, it turns out Relic was her rescuer and got her back on her feet. Sloan had stumbled across an old busted machine, thought to be a telescope projector. It needed refined kinetic ore prisms to manipulate the light to work. On the other side of the jungle, a chalice was found, and Aura told us that she had a collector that was after it. Little did we know at the time, she was talking about Kado Thorn. He was obviously the collector. Optimus Prime was also here on the island and told Dr. Sloan that she knows the path forward and that the answers we seek lie in our past. Great danger is on the horizon, and that the power that once flowed through the island, the 0 point, has now faded. Sloan had now teamed up with the Explorers to get the ancient apparatus up and working. She went off looking for clues and found this glyph deep within the ruins. It was a picture of someone that arrives during an eclipse. She'd now got the apparatus up and working, and her plan now was simple: to bring this being to the island. The apparatus manipulated the light using these prisms and revealed an incoming eclipse in the sky, the same that was shown on the walls of the ruins. Season 4 was now here, and a live event for the end of the chapter is lining up perfectly. The eclipse finally took place, and a well-known vampire, Kado Thorn, took residence on the island. He drained the island's wealth and treasures over the years to build luxury apartments. Stage 1 of Dr. Slone's big plan had worked. She quickly hired Nolan Chance and his crew, the best robbers in the universe, to create a heist to steal Kado Thorn's most prized possession, his time machine. What would Dr. Slone want with that? Well, we'll find out in a minute. The Ancients last season, in Season 3, tried warning Dr. Slone about the dangers of bringing Kado Thorn to the island, but this was quite literally our last resort. After a few weeks, the eclipse occurred again. Now Kado Thorn was in his vampire form. It was now go time. It was time to steal the time machine. Fortnitemares was now here, which worked as a perfect distraction. Vampire hunters such as the High Stakes Club and Shimmer Dusk would arrive to the island after tracking down Kado Thorn for years. It was now their time to take him down once and for good. The heist was successful. The time machine was now in Dr. Slone's hands, and during the fight between the vampires and vampire hunters, Shimmer Dusk killed Kado Thorn. His reign was now over. Out of nowhere, Jonesy had arrived to the island after being stuck out on a floating rock after the Fusion Live event for the last 4 seasons, and had now joined forces with Dr. Slone. Remember, they used to work with each other back in the Imagined Order, then became enemies, and are now back together again. So, we now have the time machine, now what? Well, remember Optimus Prime told Dr. Slone that the answers we seek lie in our past? That's exactly what we're doing. We're going back in time. So, here we are, back in time to Fortnite OG, with a mission to alter the entire storyline and to fix every mistake we've made over the last 5 years. The time machine is now here, and it's Agent Jones's mission to take it to its final destination, the rocket at Dusty Depot. Week after week, we skipped forward a season from chapter 1 using the time machine as Jones alters the timeline. Every tiny change he does now ripples forward to the future. He's also being updated weekly by Dr. Slone living in the future to stay on track with the mission. It's as simple as this. The cube was never destroyed and the floating island is still here. So the Ice King never arrived, which meant the Devourer never arrived, which meant the 0 Point never got exposed to destabilize, which also means that all of Chapter 2, 3 and 4's storyline is all about to vanish, as none of it's going to take place. This time it looks like we're getting Kevin the Cube to complete his mission of extracting the 0 Point from the vault, but it's a very risky game. The plan is to get the time machine strapped to the front of the rocket at Dusty Divot and to send the island back into another black hole. But this time, it'll be different to the last black hole event that we had, as it'll be an alternate version of it, because Jones has been messing with the timeline. All characters that have been killed off over the years, well, they're still going to be alive. And it's a perfect opportunity for the storyline to continue in a different direction. And there you go, that is the entire Fortnite storyline. 5 years of Fortnite content, all in one video. If you could, pop in code MMCS in the Fortnite Item Shop, that would be awesome, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.